Great. So I am going to share my screen. Oh, can you enable me?
How do I enable you?
Jess is going to do it.
All right. I think you have permission now.
All right. Yes, I do. Oh my God, there are so many screens I could share. Let's see. Here we go.
Be careful.
That's the one? Yeah, really? I try not to have anything untoward on any screen sharing computers, so we should be pretty safe here. Can you guys see the presentation there?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if I can full screen it. Can you still see it? I just full screened.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, good deal. Yeah, so this is going to be a similar format to what I did last time. I'm going to just kind of give some general overview, tell you what I'm going to tell you. Then we're going to go through some general concepts about, using data, why you do it, what are some of the thought processes that you might want to keep in mind. And then we'll go a little bit into some platforms and tools as much as we can. And then, as I said, there will be time for a Q&A session. So why would we even think about using this? I mean, I think for some people, this is a real question to be answered. There are a few reasons. One, it's a really great way to gut check yourself. We all have intuitions about what we want to do online, and data is kind of a way to take a step back and ask, okay, are the things that I think happening, is that actually what's happening? Oftentimes you can learn totally new things that you didn't expect just by looking at, at some broad trends, some numbers. And also, the real goal of it, I think, is to, for artists in particular, to help you connect with people better online. I think that's the bottom line for me. And again, it can feel very, disconnected to look at things this way, but in a perverse sort of way, what you're actually trying to do is do a better job of connecting. So I want to keep that in mind. I think that's really, really important. We don't need to have math anxiety here. I think a lot of artists that I have met do. Some do, some don't, but there are enough folks that do that I think it's worth addressing. A fear of math is not a barrier here. Nobody's going to make you do any regression analyses. You don't have to be a statistician to do this stuff. You can do it if you're just into it, but if you can understand concepts like less and more, you can use data to improve what you do online. You do not really have to understand the math, and that's really, I think, enough said about that. So moving into, how using these data sources, navigating them, thinking through them can help you. And that's really what we're talking about here. We're really talking about your thought processes more than anything. These tools are a way to inform your thought processes. That's it. Thing I want you to always come back to and remember, look at this young man questioning existence. You've got to start with a question. If you just sort of start, you can dive in and sometimes you can find some interesting things, but if you don't have a question in your mind that you're asking, it can be a little frustrating to work on these problems and with these tools. So start with something really simple. So, I mean, just the most basic. Did this thing that I did last month work better than what I usually do? So this could be like a Facebook post, a blog post, could be a way you listed a product on your website, could be anything. But the first thing you have to do is define each piece of that as specifically as you can. So what is this thing? Okay, let's say we're talking about a very specific Facebook post that you made, for example. What types of information are available to me about this thing, and which ones might actually provide some insight? That's the second question. So you start to look at what data sets do I actually have that I can look at here. In the case of Facebook, that could be a couple things. One, that could be the Facebook Insights tool, which we'll talk about a little bit. If you did pay to play on Facebook, there are even more tools to look at. You can export the data about that post and you can look at it somewhere else. You might be looking at your website data to see, where traffic came from. Did it come from that post that I created on that day? There are lots of different places where you might gather information about that. Other part of the question, what do I usually do? And how is the thing, very specifically, again, you got to get really specific. How's the thing that I did that I'm trying to measure, how is it actually different? What's the difference here? And what do I mean when I say work better? Again, with as much specificity as you're able to get. Do I mean more engagement? Do I mean a bigger reach? Do I mean more page views? Do I mean, did I improve the bounce rate? These are all jargony terms, but they have really important and very different meanings in the context of all of these numbers. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Another important basic concept about data: more data is always more reliable. The more you have, the better you are in terms of reliability. It doesn't mean that you always have to have some massive data set, but the reason that machine learning works is it doesn't work on little bitty data sets pretty much ever. You have to have massive data sets for machines to be able to cycle through and figure out what's going on. This is true of any data set anywhere. You need to have enough to be significant. Now, that said, we're usually, when we're talking about our own, little online presences, we don't usually have big numbers to work with. So you've got to take that into consideration and not jump to conclusions based on these tiny, tiny things that you see. You might have to, for example, if you have a smaller audience size, you might have to use a longer time period to collect more information. That can work. And so you need to take that into consideration as you're thinking through looking at this information, looking at charts and graphs. How many are we actually talking about here? If it's 5, 20% doesn't necessarily mean that much. If it's 500, yeah, probably so. Another way that you can get more data is to use pay-per-click. So things like Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, that's a pretty tried and true way if you're really trying to learn something that you can sort of increase your numbers. Of course, you have to pay for that, but if you really need to know a particular thing, that can be a really interesting way to do it. Another way to think about data, another thing you might put into practice for yourself, we always call it a bake-off. So you might have several different ideas for, let's say, an ad campaign, a Facebook post doing a particular thing. Try them all and pit them against each other. Make them compete. So in order to do this, you have to decide on a time period for yourself that you think is going to be reasonable, given your experience. You need to be able to check the data at the end to see if there's a clear winner. So be sure you kind of know what metrics are going to work out for that before you start. Otherwise, you might end up, having baked off nothing. And if you don't have a clear winner at the end, either your test, either you don't have the numbers, or there's something wrong with your test, or perhaps one is not better than the other. So these are things you have to suss out. So a good example of this is that you might do something like a bake-off with. When is the most effective time and day of the week for me to post on Facebook? So the key is to experiment with how often you post and track. So the tracking part is the key. And I'm going to harp on this. We talk about testing. There is no testing without tracking, right? So you track the particular posts. You have to track the days, the times of day. Might be easier for you to do this in a spreadsheet. You might want to use the Facebook Insights tool. You have to play around and decide what works for you. But you see how that posting time actually affects whatever your metric is that you're looking for. Maybe you're looking at organic reach. Maybe you're looking at post engagement. We'll talk more about those two metrics. Those are important. So set up a few tests. Set up a schedule for yourself over, let's say, a couple of weeks where you try different times. And you make sure the posts are similar enough that you're not introducing a bunch of weirdness there. Maybe you even try the same post at different times. That would be the most reliable way to do it from an experimental perspective. Try 5 times a week for 2 weeks. So maybe you're thinking about tempo. How often do I post? What works best? 5 times a week for 2 weeks. Then switch to 15 times a week. Then switch to 10 times a week. And then go back and look at those chunks and see what's different. At the end, you just calculate the average reach or whatever your metric is for that time period. And hey, you've got something interesting there. So that's the idea of a bake-off. This is really effective with ad campaigns. So you set up several different ads or ad groups, and by the end you should be able to see, what's working better. Another type of testing you might want to set up for yourself is called A/B testing. So this means there's something that you're doing and you want to change one specific element to see how changing that element affects the user experience. Say this is a very common type of test in user experience testing. This is a case where you want the simplest, clearest change to one thing when you have lots of things. So the classic example of this is a button color. So you might have a front page call to action section where you're trying to get somebody to go buy a particular product or go look at a particular product in your store. Okay, great. Make the button red, make the button green. Now, how do you do this? There are a couple ways you do it. You can do it with software. If you have your own website, that's possible. It's usually there, some plugins and ways to do it, say with a WordPress website that don't require a bunch of technical knowledge. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is just to sort of fake it. So in that case, you'd have the same site loading up, and one person loads it up and the button's red, and one person loads it up and the button's green, right? At basically the same time. It randomly shows two different button colors depending on the user, the random user. Another way to do it is just to leave it red for 2 weeks, then switch it to green and compare your metrics. But A/B tests can be shockingly helpful for simple things like this. And you'd be very surprised, I would imagine, at how much something as simple as a button color can affect conversion rates, which is what we call, if you want someone to do something and they do it, we call that a conversion. So this is a really useful and simple type of test that you can sort of participate in a lot of different ways. I want to just revisit this. We looked at this in week 1, and I just want to remind you about it because in the context of your data collection and your analysis of that data, you really need to be aware of where you are in this process, right? This is still very important. And why is that? It's because you want to know what your goal is for the moment that you're looking at. You're always looking at a specific type of thing when you're doing data analysis. You're always asking yourself a specific question. So is the question you're asking related to capturing new leads? Is it related to that actual purchase? Is it related to the engagement? So I wanted to just kind of put that back in your mind as something that it's not just for user interface. It's something that you need to be kind of thinking of all the time. And we have another model here, really simple, but this I think is one of the most important basic concepts that you could get from this talk. This is a process that you should be going through if you're really wanting to use the internet to its fullest capability to help you. You should be doing these 3 things in a cycle all the time. And you should probably be doing it in several different ways all the time. Looking over here, testing, tracking, changing, testing again, tracking again, changing again. It's not something that you sort of set and forget. And if you do, that's okay, but you're going to miss out on some opportunities that way, for sure. This is how the internet has become the sort of efficiency machine that it is, and we as artists can learn from that and use it too. So this is really critical. I'll pause here for any questions so far before we move on to some platforms. Yeah, Jess.
I feel like I always have questions.
A lot of questions.
So just going right back to that engagement model, I'm curious, why is website not a way to capture audiences?
Well, it is. I mean, it's not typically, so that's kind of a simplified version. Typically, somebody comes to the website from somewhere, be it search, ads, or social. Those would be the three most common. There are times when people will have your site bookmarked. This is actually a much deeper topic than it might seem. The question of, what does Google count as a direct, what they call a direct visit? That's the only time when somebody's not coming from anywhere, but often they actually are coming from somewhere like an email. So it's in general, the website is a place that you're pulling people into from somewhere else. Although there are absolutely exceptions to that. It's a good question. Yeah, Brian. I can't see everyone on my screen right now, so just so you know, if I'm not responding, just make some sound.
Okay, so my website's been up for about a month. I'm getting about 15 visitors a week, which isn't enough to do any statistics on. And I should preface that by saying I've been a science teacher forever, so statistics are my thing. And I also have a marketing degree and did marketing for a bank for 12 years and applied my scientific techniques to that. So as far as regression analysis, cake. But with only 15 data points a week, I don't have enough to do anything. So until I find a way to drive more business to my site, and that's kind of the catch-22 I'm in. I don't know, I don't have the statistics to figure out how to drive more business to my site. And at the same time, without the business to my site, I don't have anything I do statistics with.
Yeah, that's a very, very real and very, very common problem. And to be honest, most people never get past it, but I believe that you will. And here's why. All you have to do to get past that is find some way. It can be almost any way other than just pure, spam. It has to be realistic traffic, right? You want traffic to the site that are the users that you want. I mean, so if we take that as a given, all you have to do is find some way elsewhere on the internet to send them to your site. This is easier said than done, but it is absolutely possible. So, some of the things we talked about in my first week were geared to address that. But as I said then, it's a cold start problem. It's very difficult. So you need to experiment on social platforms. Probably is the number one thing that I would recommend for most artists. You have something that most people who have this problem don't have, which is that you have cool looking stuff that you're making. People on social media love cool looking stuff. They're there for that. That's what they like. So you're already, you kind of have a leg up on that front. So if you can leverage it, you really just have to start making noise in those areas and start your data mindset there. So instead of starting with the Google Analytics, starting with the website analytics, which we're going to talk about more, start with the social side, start with that capture and engage, and start to try to drive that traffic, and you will see it go up. The other way, if you can do it, and it sounds like you're the type of person who absolutely could successfully do this, I absolutely recommend Google Ads for this purpose. And that is because it doesn't have to be super expensive. If you have $5 a day to spend for a while, you can start to see some traffic, and you can start to see what's going on a little bit better. There are a lot of caveats to that. It really does require it requires a nerd. You have to have somewhat of that like analytical mindset to do Google Ads. It's a high bar to entry, I'm not going to lie. But if you can do that, or if you can hire someone to do it, that's a great way to sort of stimulate that initial data set and start to figure out what you can do. And search will follow from that too. That's important. Jim, you're muted. There you are.
Okay. So what I found, especially with Facebook, but also Instagram, as something I think most people find is that there's a bell curve with the highest being Wednesday and the lowest being the weekend. And it starts around breakfast and then peaks at lunchtime, and then again before supper. and after people come back from work or around that time, even when they're not working. So you want to get people at the right time, because it's sort of like catching the wave. If you don't have anybody respond to it initially, and then it falls off, and
Yeah.
if you have a lot of friends and they look at your stuff a lot, you can start catch a wave, and then especially if you have something that interests people, and especially like I always think of that Oprah kind of thing, where I was down and now I'm up, whatever it is. I had my last drink 30 minutes ago, and everybody's, hey, and it catches, but it could also be something like, if you have pens, like do something unusual with them, the presentation, flowers or something, where people just take extra notice, or a little video, and then you catch a wave, and then it can keep going. But if you don't catch that wave, it's hard to have people even come across your posting.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And the real fact of the matter is, Facebook does not really help pages that are not buying ads. And in fact, over the years, it has actively, pushed down what's called organic posts. And I'm sure you guys have all seen this if you use Facebook on your own. It used to be if you followed a page, let's say even 5 or 8 years ago, if you followed a page on Facebook, you pretty much would see, if you wanted to see every post that they made, you would see that. But that can't happen anymore. You literally can't do that. Facebook does not allow that. Why? Because they're selling ads. That's all they care about. It's the only thing that they make money from. So you're really fighting, if you're not an ad purchaser on Facebook, you're really fighting with their algorithms all the time, and you have a real handicap. So it's worth knowing that and being aware of how that works. And I'm going to address a couple things about that in this next session specifically toward Facebook that should at least help give you an idea of what that handicap is and maybe how to fight it a little bit. One thing, one tool to fight it is just, more and more and more engagement from you. Yeah, Jess.
I think, Claudia, I just wanted to check in. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Well, I have a comment. I think that cross-pollination with Facebook actually works. And for Brian, who makes pens, like I know a potter who is a hand builder, and she actually makes pen and pencil trays. And if there was like she had one of his pens or he had one of her trays, and they talked about, this photo is blah, 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 somehow it works. So that's the way to get drive more people, and then they share it with their friends and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. It's that, ability to break out of your own friend circle, your own orbit. It's hard. There's a lot of gravity in that. And, Facebook, frankly, does not make it easy, but I think you're totally right. That's a really good strategy, Claudia. Sorry, I only have one strip of people right now at a time. So sorry, I couldn't see you, but thanks, Jess, for catching that. Anybody else before we move on? Yeah, Jim. Oh, you're muted again.
Just that if you're not somebody that, in general speaking, I know they have changed the algorithms, but generally, if you're not active on like Facebook, you're going to be lost in the dark. You have to like things and interact with people, and people have to interact with you, and that'll bring up your visibility, at least somewhat. But if you're in the background, nobody's going to find you.
That's right. Yeah, Brian.
With regard to that, I have 2 Facebook sites. I have my personal one and I have my business page for Brian Field Pens. I'm very active on the personal one. Does that activity affect what? Okay, because on the business one, when I make a new pen, I post it, but otherwise, there isn't that much to do there. And, you know, if I make 2-3 pens a week, that's a lot. That will be a lot of posts for me, 2 or 3 on that site. Whereas on my personal site, I may do 5-10 posts a day because I'm very politically active. So
that's the trick, Brian. That's exactly the trick, is that, and this is kind of where I was going earlier, and we'll look again at some more specific metrics to look at there, but the thing that you absolutely must do if you want to use Facebook for your business, your arts business, if you want to use a page as opposed to your personal Facebook, which I do recommend. I said that last time, but it is a strong recommendation that you have your business practice be separate and your arts practice be separate from your personal stuff for a lot of reasons. But if you do that, you've got to just make a lot of noise on your business page. You have to just be, you know, rah doing stuff all the time. This is one of the things that very young people have on us older folks, is that, you know, young people have no shame about just constantly throwing stuff out there. They're just, oh, I made this thing. This is so cool. Here it is. Here's another thing. 5 minutes later, here's another thing. And they're just very energetic like that on social media. For me, that's difficult. I'm not really a huge fan of doing that, you know, for myself. And I think a lot of people over the age of, you know, 35 are probably in that same boat. But that works. That works. I mean, there's just no question about it. Now, you can do it in ways that are ineffective, but it's almost impossible without that type of activity level to make a dent on Facebook, unless you're buying ads. Again, I mean, and even then, we'll talk about that too. That's, you know, that's not a sure bet to success either. So I think it's important that if that's the case for you, for example, I make a pen, I post a picture of it, and now I have a Facebook post. You've got to come up with other things. So I think that's actually a really good segue into the platform discussion, because I'm going to talk about that pretty specifically. So we're just going to run through again, you know, just an overview, and I hope you guys, you know, spot some things in here that are of interest to you so that you can dive deeper into them. But some of the most common and popular tools that you might use to look at data in your life as an artist online. Facebook Insights being, you know, the #1 most obvious. This is not available for personal pages. You don't get to see any information about, you know, who your friends are on Facebook in the sense of charts and graphs. They do provide a lot of useful information, and they also allow you to export your data to spreadsheets. I will say I think Facebook Insights could be a lot better. Like I'm a little surprised at how at how basic it really is. They don't, but there is a lot that can be done with it. So that's worth noting. It doesn't have to be some crazy thing, but Facebook Insights might look something like this. It looks different every year. They're putting the menu on the left now, but this is, you know, just sort of a screenshot of the type of thing you might see if you haven't gone to see this. You're going to be, you know, you're going to be looking at things like general likes. How big is your reach? They're really into this concept of the reach, which means how many, if each thing is a tentacle, how many people does it get to? Who's talking about it? All this kind of fun stuff. So one of the really nice things that it has is some basic demographic information. I think this is a little bit old, and now this exact same chart is listed under what's called people. I think the little menu is on the left now, but it's a very similar situation, and you can just sort of explore through the different charts and graphs they offer. But this can be a really good general overview. You know, in this case, you can see that whatever Facebook page this is very female and very much, you know, South Africa. So even that little bit of information can be useful. And if you have enough Facebook reach, you know, even a few hundred people, you know, you can really learn, oh my God, I am not getting anywhere outside of Peterborough. Everybody who knows me is in Peterborough. Okay, well, is that really what I want? Can we fix that? So that's where you start to ask questions about the data. In Facebook land, this is something that Facebook doesn't exactly tell you, and people have had to do a lot of deep research to find this out. Engagement trumps reach. So what are those two things? Engagement means when somebody actually does something with your posts. They like, they comment, they share. Those are the three primary pillars on Facebook land: like, comment, and share. That's engagement. Reach just means it popped up on somebody's screen. They didn't have to touch it. They didn't have to even notice it was there, but that's part of the reach. If it came in through someone's feed, that counts as 1 point toward reach. If somebody touched it and did something with it, that counts as 1 point toward engagement. If you have to pick something to work toward, pick engagement. That's the golden goose on Facebook. And increased engagement, the Facebook algorithms will automatically start to increase your reach. It'll start showing, if it sees that people like your posts and are doing stuff and interacting with them, for Facebook, that's all they care about. So they'll start to show those posts to more people because people like them. So we're going to talk about how to drive engagement. And again, here in Facebook world, remembering that we're mostly probably, in general, capturing new people and engaging our people that know us already. So how to drive this engagement? This top one is super, super, super critical. Facebook has, I don't even know how many different post formats now. It's insane. It's like 34. I mean, it's a lot. They have a lot of ways that you can create a Facebook post. It changes all the time. So mix it up. Don't just make one type of post. Try different ones. Try a live video. This is a relatively new in internet world thing. It's incredibly engaging. There's been a lot of research done on this that shows that when given two exact, the same exact video, looking the same exact way on the screen, and one of them is live happening now and one of them is not, people will pick the live one. They love the live. It's just a little extra glue for their eyes. So try going live. Again, using your research to determine what time and what content, try a live video. We're doing it now. Woo! You guys have a one-up on this already. Be sure your content is pro. Make sure it looks good. Make sure it fits in the right formats. You're visual artists, most of you, so this is going to come fairly natural to you, but it's worth thinking about. Just be sure it looks really, really good. People expect it now, and if they don't see it, they're going to just it may get in their feed, but they're not going to stop and look at it. Again, test your posting time and your tempo. This is really critical for engagement. Another thing that a lot of people maybe don't think about enough is in content marketing world, they call it evergreen content, which is just a way of saying stuff that you reuse. So if you have stuff that's successful, do it again. Just use the same post. Do it again. Now, you have to be careful with this because you can obviously go overboard and make people crazy. But the chances are that if you post something again, either the person who already saw it isn't going to remember that they saw it, or the same person's not even going to see it again. It'll be different people, but you already know that thing worked. So use it again. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, as you're doing this, always be tracking what you're doing. Don't forget to check in with yourself. Don't forget to gut check. Be sure that these things that you're doing are working. So moving on from Facebook to your website analytics, which I think is a big question for lots of people. For most people who run a sort of business of any kind online, this is going to be your most important tool in your data tool belt. Although Google Analytics is by far the most popular website analytics platform, there are others. So if for some reason you just hate Google or you hate Google Analytics, there are ones that try to simplify it for you. Ironically, if you Google search for them, you'll find them, all the competitors for Google Analytics. And so I recommend, checking out what's out there. But frankly, most people use Google Analytics. It's awesome. There is some learning curve, but it really does provide a lot of stuff for free. So what does web analytics do? It measures traffic on your own web property. Now, this has caveats to it. So Squarespace site is not exactly really your own. It's not, you're not even renting the server space, but you can install your tracking code on your Squarespace site and use Google Analytics and see what's going on. So what are some important metrics? There are 1,000,001 articles out there where you can learn the terminology used in website analytics, and we don't have the time to do that here. So I sort of picked a few really important ones. I do recommend you familiarize yourself with what these terms really mean. I'll give you some basic important metrics and basic definitions for them here. You need to be looking at where traffic on your website is coming from. This is one of the most important things to know, especially if you're actively doing, say, email campaigns, or you're actively using social media. Let's say you're using Instagram and Facebook. You might find out that you can just stop using Facebook completely because no one is coming to your website and no one's buying anything from Facebook. I mean, just stop wasting your time. Wouldn't that be nice? So traffic source can be really important. So bounce rate and exit pages. So the bounce rate, it's a term people throw around a lot, but I think a lot of people have a misconception about what it is. All it means is somebody gets to a page on a website. It's the first page they visit on the site, and they do not do anything else. So they don't click on anything. They don't go to another page. They just see the page and they go, whoop, they bounce. It's a really important measure of engagement on the web. There are a lot of exceptions to that where, somebody may sit on a page for 5 minutes reading it and get all the information they want from it and have had a very engaging time with that website and still be counted as a bounce. So there are a lot of user experience and web design considerations with regard to bounce rate. Exit pages just means which page did people leave on your site. So these are metrics that you want to look at because these are ways your site might be failing people. Remember, we talked about, creating a user experience that's inviting, that invites exploration, engagement. If you're noticing high bounce rates or particular pages that you want people to be engaging on, but they're exiting your site on regularly, that's a time to dive into that site and look and see what's wrong. It's really, really critical. This is very often overlooked because, people see those metrics and go, whatever, I already built my website. But if you really want to optimize, that's maybe your, I would say one of the top 2 or 3 things to look at. You want to know what your popular pages are, where people are coming into the site. So let's imagine you have a store, and for most store software, it'll create a page for a particular category. So let's say you have a category for watercolor on your website, and every one of your watercolors is on this page called mydomain.com/watercolor. You haven't thought about that as a landing page for people because usually for most people, when they think about where is somebody going to enter my site, they think they're coming through the front door. They're coming to, mydomain.com, and they're going to click on my menu or what I put on my front page. But very, very often today, that is absolutely not the case. Google is getting very good at sending people to internal pages first. So if you find out that people are entering, which you can do in Google Analytics, you can see the flow of people through the site. So you can see they're all coming in on that watercolor page. You need to make sure that page puts your best foot forward, that it's very clear where someone is, that it offers all the information that they would need to start learning what's going on. Really key. Visitor demographics. So this is a great thing about Google Analytics. Obviously, it's all anonymized data, but you can really learn a lot more than you can on Facebook about the demographics of your website visitors. So that's worth knowing for lots of reasons, some very obvious and some not. But that's something I would suggest looking at as you start to generate more traffic, especially. E-commerce platform. So we were, I think Susan was asking about e-commerce platforms before, and we can talk specifically about them, but I do want to point out, when you're choosing what you're going to use to actually sell your products, you need to be sure that it's something that either has a whiz-bang analytics system built in, or something that connects really well with Google Analytics, for example, because you need to be able to know specifically, okay, somebody came from Facebook, they entered on this page, they followed this path, and they actually bought something. That is the most important moment for your store. Done, they clicked add to cart and they paid for it and you shipped it to them. You need to track all the way from, point A to point Z in that process. It's critical. You can learn so much and you can find so many little tweak failure points along the way that you can just sort of shore up and nudge, and over time, you really make that process work better. So be sure that your e-commerce platform is one where you're comfortable with how its analytics works and that you can track all the way from social to that sale. That's a really big deal. Going to the ad platforms for just a moment, Google Ads is, for a non-statistician, which I misspelled, it probably provides the most significant amount of data on the users. It is very, very deep. Google opens a lot more up to its paying customers. And again, just like Facebook, Google makes money from ads. So those are the people that Google's courting, the people buying those ads. It's not, the searchers. It's the ad purchasers. So they really provide a lot of service to folks in Google Ads. I will say that it is a difficult platform to use. And if you're not that kind of person, I wouldn't even go there. But if you are, if you know that about yourself, and if you are, you do know that about yourself, go for it, give it a shot, just give yourself a $50 budget and a month or two and see what you can do with it. Because even if you're not using it to drive lots of traffic, if you're really more using it to test ideas, it can be very, very, very powerful for that. And I would say of all the tools that I've shared with you, it's probably the most powerful on that front. Facebook ads, very popular platform for small business because it's so much easier to use than Google Ads. They make it just dead simple to get an ad going. I mean, you've all probably seen, what's this post? $5, $2. All right, great. I'll put in, no problem, $2. That's easy. Well, it is. It's a little too easy, I would say, because frankly, Facebook campaigns require optimizing too. They require analytical thought, and it's very easy to just click the button, put your credit card in, and then just start watching money, go down the drain for as long as you let it go. So you really want to be careful with Facebook ads. I've had a lot of both individuals and companies come to our business, and we sort of take a look at what they've got going. And we once had a company that had spent over it was a law firm, so they had a lot of money, but they had spent over $100,000 the last year on Facebook ads, and they hadn't gotten any clients from them, like none. So just warning, it's easy to screw up with this. Keep an eye on it. And again, that's kind of the recurring theme here, right? You just keep an eye on all of it. You have to be just kind of watching everything. You can't let it go. It feels like you can. It's easy to, but if you do, you will miss opportunities. And in the case of ad platforms, you'll certainly waste money. Another thing I want to point out that is easy to miss is Google Sheets. So this is part of the Google Docs program. And in the last couple of years, they've started adding these really cool features to Google Sheets. So Google obviously has a lot of great machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms, and they started putting them into a feature called Explore in Google Sheets. So if you just put a spreadsheet of anything into Google Sheets, anything that's remote, that's organized, it has rows and columns, there's maybe column headers that Google Sheets can read. So your Facebook data, if you have some e-commerce sales data, these are great candidates for this. If you pop it into Google Sheets and start hitting the Explore button and start using that tool, it will start to just tell you things about your data that are salient, that might actually be very helpful to you. So if you're not really sure how to navigate that kind of data, this is a very beginner-friendly tool that's pretty recent, that's out there. There are other AI tools available, but recently, in the past couple of years, they've started to mostly lock down. For example, IBM Watson used to be freely available, but it's really not available to people anymore. That was the tool that famously beat the Jeopardy champion, and is just really outstanding. But unfortunately, I don't think you can use it anymore. So I would definitely recommend trying Google Sheets as a tool to check out. And just to wrap up, you know, I think this is a topic that is very fraught. It is scary in certain ways. It is difficult. It does require a lot of effort. And I do think that gardening is an apt metaphor for it, actually, because just like with starting a garden, growing a garden, instant gratification is not going to happen for you. It doesn't exist. You have to wait. Little bitty changes happen, and you watch them and you adjust based on what you see. You have to research what you're planting in your garden. You're going to be in a particular climate zone, and if you plant something that's outside of your climate zone, it's going to die. If you start using techniques on the internet that don't work for your people, they're not going to go anywhere. Just like gardening, you have to start culling things that aren't working. You know, you have to say, okay, I like this plant, that's nice, but it's not working in this context. I need to either move it over here, or I just need to get rid of it. It needs to go away. You got to weed often, all the time, constant weeding. If you wait too long, it becomes very, very difficult to sift through what you've got. You need to be looking and tracking. You need to be thinking about all of these things consistently, and it will, although it feels difficult as you're sort of getting started in this approach, over time, you'll start to see change. You'll be very satisfied, and you'll see real effects. But you can't expect them immediately. And, you know, I think if you give it a try and give it a chance, though, a real chance for a few months, that you might be very surprised. So with that, thank you very much. And I'm going to unshare my screen so that we can talk. Jim, I think. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. So just an early experience I had with Instagram, when I didn't have many friends, because it tends to be younger people that use Instagram, generally speaking. So I paid like $35 to get more friends, because it said they'll find people that are like you, you know. And I got tons. Nobody was like me. It was junk. It was pure junk. And anybody that wanted it, they just fell out. I didn't accept them. That wasn't a good experience. But I do think with you know, like with anything, you just have to keep at it, and there's no way around that. You know, unless you have something that's so marvelous and so exciting that everybody will notice it right away.
Even then, that's tough these days. Yeah, I am 100% with you there. It really does require an awful lot of persistence.
For me, my concern is the amount of time suck that this is. In other words, in order to be able to develop an internet presence, you have to spend an awful lot of time on it. When you talk about, you know, posting a lot more on Facebook, I'm posting maybe once a week or something like that. And I know that's not enough, but that takes me time. I'd much rather be making pens than diddling around in front of the computer. I've spent probably in the last 3 weeks, a couple of hours a day, either learning how to do stuff on the internet, like using Canva to make posts and things like that, or learning how to use Pinterest analytics, all this stuff. And so far, I'm not getting any action for it. And I'm wondering, how much time do I need to spend before I actually start to sell some pens on the website? My first week, I sold $900 worth of pens because I'd sent an email out to previous customers. But since then, my actual work on publicizing stuff on the internet hasn't done anything.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, that's a good question. And there's obviously not a pat answer to how much time do I need to spend. But I try to think of it like this. I mean, if you run a decent sized, small to medium sized company, let's say, you probably have someone employed whose full-time job it is to work the mostly social internet. They may also do website updates, but their job is to do digital stuff. And you probably also have some outsourced people like me who you pay to do the more technical side of things. Yes, these people are probably selling more than you, but I do think, you know, imagining that you need to devote an hour a day to it or something like this is not ridiculous. I don't think it's something that you can do, you know, for an hour a week and expect real results. Yeah, Jim, you're muted. Oh, unmute, Jim. I can tell you're saying something awesome.
In Instagram, they say you should have a post a day, really. You have to keep people engaged in what we're doing. I've had a good experience with my daughter who does pottery, who's become very successful in sales, but it took her a long time. She was very persistent, and it just took a long time. And she's somebody that put the time and you know, well, the time in it, and it just take a long time. So
Yeah.
it's just like, just think if you didn't have any social media, where would you'd be buying ads in magazines and newspapers, and you'd be, you know, whatever. That would take time too.
Yeah, and it's not usually that fun. I mean, you know, for most people, it is part of the job of, you know, the responsibility of saying, you know what, I'm gonna give this a shot to actually make money doing this thing that I love doing. And yeah, not every minute of it is fun, but I try to think of it this way. And I'm a songwriter, and I produce music, and that's something I think I'm gonna start putting back out there again soon. And I'm trying to psych myself up for it, frankly, by saying, okay, I'm not 25 anymore. I really can only go about 5 hours of working in my studio. Like that's about, at that point, my head starts to, like, I need to walk away. So, okay, well that's, you know, I have 3 more hours that day. If I have a full-time job, I have 3 more hours to do other things. So I don't know, that's just a mental trick that I use sometimes, but yeah, we'll see how I do with it. I haven't finished the album yet, so.
One of the things that I found really helpful with our office is we use something called Hootsuite. So we schedule out like 3 to 5 posts a week that are like, they're gonna be there. We take an afternoon to just like take care of that. And if we don't feel inspired or lively or excited about things that we're doing live or that we wanna share in the moment, we don't have to, but we can if we want to. And if we don't, you know, we've got that reliable thing that we've spent like 2 or 3 hours one afternoon, knocked them all out of the park. Sometimes it doesn't even take that long, depending on if you have to, like, if you just are sharing pictures or things that already are in your stash, resharing content.
Great idea. Another tool I want to point out to people, because it's been transformative for me personally, and I've known an awful lot of people who really love it, is called, if you haven't used Trello before, if you're the type of person who likes to organize things into lists and cards, Trello is a really amazing tool for doing things like project managing your social media presence. Hootsuite is another great one, but Trello can kind of morph to organize anything you want it to. So check it out if that's of any interest to you. I find it to be a very useful tool for things like that as well.
How do you spell it?
Trello.
Just like it sounds.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I don't know what I would do occasionally, very occasionally, Trello's servers go down for a few minutes, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do right now. I'm gonna go outside. Yeah, Claudia, be sure to unmute.
Who was
Yeah.
it that shared their analysis of times and for Facebook posts? It was either Brian or
Jim, I think.
was it Jim? Wait, you're muted. Wait.
Should I say it?
Yeah, I think she was wanting you to give a brief overview again of what you found in terms of good times for posting on Facebook. And before you do, I will also say, Claudia, that this is a very Googleable question. And Jim's answers appear to be pretty much aligned with the general answers, but you might want to check into it even further.
Yeah, basically it's a bell curve. It drops off at on the weekend, especially the lowest on Sunday is, but you start noticing it on Friday evening, and then the high part of it is Wednesday, generally speaking, and then it starts off about breakfast time or right when people get up, and then it peaks at lunchtime, and then it starts going down somewhat around supper time. Although sometimes there's a little peak around 9 o'clock. But that's a general one, but I think it holds for most people. And even though when you have friends, international friends, and you have people on the other side of the time zone and all that, it still seems to work out for that. So if you want to get the best response, you go when people are looking at their posts.
Or a little bit before is a good idea, so that you sort of sneak into that feed at the top of that wave. As you said, Jim, you kind of ride that wave. But yeah, that's a really, really important topic. It does vary, page to page. So it's probably worth, if you're really using Facebook with any seriousness, it's probably worth doing a little bit of your own testing just to check out and make sure that your stuff is aligning with that and you're really getting the most out of it. But yeah, I mean, I think Jim's description matches, the general trends that I've read about Facebook as well.
Yeah, for Instagram, I do usually 7:30 or a little later. If I do a little bit before, I don't get good results. That's what I find. But it's a certain time and then you have the posts that people are going to react to for one reason or another, and you can put them on any time, and you're just like amazed. Be the worst time that you would think that people would notice it, and it tends to be a big one that keeps multiplying. They tend to be human interest kind of posts.
And if those posts that do generate that engagement are useful to you as part of your business, I would suggest those posts as the ones you boost as paid posts on Facebook or Instagram. So one of the things that they'll do is they'll just sort of pick a random post that got like no engagement and put it in front of you and tell you to boost it. Never do that. That's the fastest way to throw away money. You want to pick ones, and again, that engagement metric, that's a real metric for Facebook. I told you it means people actually touched the thing. Those high engagement posts are the ones that you want to pay to boost, because you already know they work. So that's just it's a little tidbit, something if you're considering, doing a little advertising on social media, that is the way to do it. Okay, well, it looks like it's a little bit after 3, so seems like we're probably wrapping up. And I just want to thank everybody very much for coming to these. It's really fun to do these things for artists as opposed to doing them for businesses. I like the approach that I get to take, and I love the feedback I get, and I love meeting all of the cool new people. So thank you so much for letting me do this. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for being here and contributing your time. It's really exciting. It's really exciting to get these like foundational sort of ideas underneath what it is that we're trying to build in these online presences. So wonderful. And thank you all, you artists, for being here, and for our friends on Facebook that are watching this now or later. Of course, I want to thank the State Council on the Arts, New Hampshire State Council on the Arts, and New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, who contribute funding to support programs just like this, as well as CNS Wholesale Grocers, fantastic sponsors of this program. And I want to mention next week's workshop is about the entrepreneurship grant. We are also working on a workshop about gateless writing, writing for your website, writing content to inspire engagement and to inspire people generally. So those will be coming up. One is next week. The next one will be in August. I am available for coaching hours to the Hannah Grimes Center, and they also have other coaches available to help you further this work. So check them out. They're a fantastic site for entrepreneurs in our region, and coaching sessions, your first with pretty much everyone, is a free session. Arts Alive does free coaching sessions as well. So those are the things that are out there that are great resources. And so I'm going to turn off our Facebook Live. So thanks, live audience, for being with